Many thanks to PPA for sponsoring this week's video. So can you hear that? Boop, boop. What about now? Boop. Well, it's getting a little bit better, but it's not nearly as good as it was prior to the new floors going in. So last week I had ripped up all the carpet in my office and replaced it with hardwood floors, which looks substantially better than the carpet did. But it sure has produced a noticeable echo, which I'm going to continue to work towards resolving over the coming weeks. But with the help of some rugs and towels on the floor, it's much better now than it was on the actual install day, that's for sure. Anywho, so a bit more than 2 years ago, that was when I first began using Fuji cameras for both landscape photography and for filming video content for this YouTube channel. And the first Fuji camera I purchased was the X-T3. Then I coupled that with the, at that time, the newly released X-T4, which was and is an amazing camera. And then about 10 months ago, I had sold my X-T3 to make way for the new GFX 100S. So that's a kind of a quick rundown of the evolution of my Fuji setup. And just for a point of reference, before I switched to Fuji, I was using the Sony a7R Mark II for both video and stills work. Now, over the past couple of years, perhaps the most commonly asked question I've received had to do with my switch away from Sony and over to the Fuji system. Why switch? What would I have done differently? And am I still happy with my decision? And in this video, I want to share with you my 2-year experience using only a Fuji system for landscape photography and recording video for this channel. So I broke this video down into multiple different parts just to kind of go over the different aspects of using the Fuji system, what's kind of like really stuck out in my mind as far as the things that I've really enjoyed from using this system from previous systems that I have owned. So one of the things that using a Fuji camera has taught me is that the actual process is absolutely critical. And what I mean by that is it's so easy to get caught up in the technicalities of photography. I could go on and on about the very granular, specific technicalities of using cameras. And when you get out there on location, it's easy to kind of get sucked into that. And what using Fuji cameras has done for me is just kind of helped me to kind of get out of that rabbit hole, if you will, and just kind of enjoy using the camera more often, because I think that a camera is really, it should be kind of an extension of yourself. It shouldn't be this thing that you have to really put a lot of thought into using. I think that's what is really great about using the Fuji cameras is it's very intuitive. The X-T3 and the X-T4 both have dedicated aperture rings on the lenses, just like the GFX 100S does. You got dedicated shutter speed dials, you got dedicated ISO dials, and things like that. And it just makes it very, very easy to use these cameras. And I absolutely love that. When I get on location, it just feels like the camera is an extension of you. You don't have to put a lot of thought into creating the photograph. You can spend the majority of your brain power just focusing on being creative. And I think that's really great. And I think these cameras are a lot of fun to do. And it kind of reinvigorated me a little bit. Something else I love about all the Fuji cameras that I've used, and keep in mind, I haven't used like 10 or 20 different cameras. I've used the X-T3, the X-T4, and the GFX 100S. But the menu system, it's so simple to use. Now, not a knock against Sony, but I always found that their menu systems to be a little bit cumbersome. I've spent a lot of time digging through pages of menu systems, when I'm on location or trying to look something up on my phone to figure out how to do something. I think Fuji's done a very good job of laying out their menu system. It's easy to customize these cameras, and the ergonomics of these cameras I think are absolutely fantastic. The X-T4 feels amazing, the 3 felt amazing, the GFX 100S, it's a little bit bigger of a camera, but it feels absolutely incredible in your hands. The vertical flip out screen. Now, when I got the X-T3, one of the things that I loved about it was the fact that I usually shoot in a portrait orientation, and you can flip out the screen like so, right here when you're on location. I thought that was incredible. But then I got the X-T4, and I noticed that they did away with that. And I think it's because the X-T4 feels like it's a little bit more geared for video versus photography. But I was so excited when I saw that the GFX 100S brought that vertical flip out screen back. So I think that is absolutely fantastic. It's something that I've really enjoyed using while on location as well. The touch screen features, I know that tons of cameras out there have touch screens, but what I think is what is so incredible about these touch screens is that they utilize a lot of swipe features. So swipe features that we use in like iPhones and smartphones today, it's so ingrained in the way that we interact and interface with electronics nowadays that I think it's great that Fuji puts a lot of those swipe features in the screen as well, because it's just, like I said, it's very intuitive. It's very natural for us nowadays. So I think that was a great kind of add on as well. The what else? Something that's not a part of the XT3 or XT4, but this top LCD screen. I think it's fantastic just to be able to easily look down on your screen to see your histogram or to see your settings or whatever you want to set that top screen to. So, I mean, those are just kind of the things that make it to where it's very exciting for me to use these cameras on location. The film simulations, I don't shoot in JPEG really, but I can't tell you how many times I've been on location. I'm just kind of waiting for the sun to set or the sun to rise, and I got a little bit of time to kill. Composition set, I'm just kind of relaxing. And I just kind of go through some of those film simulations and just change them on the screen just to kind of see what it would do. It just sparks a little bit of additional creativity. And like I said, I think it's just a lot of fun to do when you're out there and you got a little bit of time to kill. But most importantly for me, it was just fun to use and I enjoyed it. And it just kind of got my mind out of the technical side of photography and let me focus more on what's most important, which is the creative side of photography. Now, as far as the build quality goes, I kind of touched on a moment ago. I have found that the 3 Fuji cameras that I have used are all built like a solid tank. They're all like a brick. They are very, very good build quality, especially the GFX 100S is absolutely a stout piece of equipment. The weather sealing on these cameras is absolutely fantastic. I have never had an issue from pouring rain, hail, snow, pretty extreme heat, I would say. Sand, and just never one issue at all. The only issue that I have had, and I posted about this on Instagram recently, is this lens. This is the 10-24 that I have that I use for my XT4. It's been beat up a lot. You can see kind of the battle scars everywhere. It started to break down on me, and I've got the new 10-24 that I'm filming on right now that I had to replace this with. But and I should mention that I'm filming this video on the XT4 like I film all the videos for this channel now. But the battery life is fantastic. These two, the XT4 and the GFX 100S share the same batteries, which is fantastic as well. Things like the Fuji lenses. Fuji is known for beautiful glass, and it is absolutely fantastic. My only kind of, I can't say it's a gripe, but the longer lens options on the GFX series, it's a little limited, and I'm a big fan of kind of super telephoto lenses, and they do have some very much longer focal lengths, but they're extremely expensive. I know that's going to be changing soon as Fuji releases new longer focal lengths for the GFX series, but as it is right now, it's a little bit limited, but the glass that they do offer, it's absolutely incredible. Automatic focus stacking. I know a lot of cameras do it today. I think Fuji has implemented it very well. Longer exposure times. You don't have to hook up an intervalometer or a remote shutter release to do extended shutter times beyond 30 seconds. It's all built into the camera. It's one thing I think is pretty neat. I'm not sure why other camera manufacturers don't do that. And perhaps the biggest thing is I think Fujifilm is the absolute best in the industry when it comes to firmware upgrades. I mean, they are still offering firmware upgrades for cameras that they have released, I don't know, like 8 or 10 years ago. So I think when you buy a Fujifilm camera, you can rest assured that it's kind of future-proof for quite a while. They're going to continue to offer firmware upgrades and make that camera better and better and better and better every time they release something new. And I think that's something that's a little bit unique. I think a lot of camera manufacturers out there just release, they save firmware upgrades for the new refresh cycle of that camera, and you have to go buy that new camera. But Fujifilm just offers a lot of this in free firmware upgrades, and I think that's absolutely tremendous. And then as far as image quality is concerned, I think all cameras out there today are producing incredible images. Yes, I think Fuji's images are absolutely just gorgeous, especially with the GFX 100S, the detail that comes out of this camera, along with the dynamic range and the color rendition. It's absolutely mind-blowing in my opinion. But like I said, all cameras today are producing incredible images, but I really have enjoyed using the raw files that Fuji produces out of these cameras. The raw files that comes out of the GFX 100S, you can really push these and still maintain a very clean image. I think that's absolutely fantastic. The shadow recovery that comes out of this camera is something I've never experienced before in my life. So that's something that I get pretty excited about. But the raw files, you can push them really far and they still hold up well. And the accurate white balance, it's something that I think in my experience, Fuji, or I should say the GFX 100S and the X-T3, those are the best or most accurate white balances that I've used in cameras. When I get these images back in post, I have to do very little white balance manipulation to kind of get those to a more correct white balance. They seem to be pretty true right out of camera in the majority of scenarios, so I think that's great. And then Capture One with Fuji files. I think anyone who pays attention to the Fujifilm ecosystem kind of knows that Capture One works best with Fuji's raw files. And personally, I think it's an absolute match made in heaven. I mean, it is pure magic how well Capture One edits these Fuji raw files, way better than Lightroom or anything like that. And I think, like, you know, Lightroom edits, handles Sony raw files very well, handles Canon raw files very, very well. But the way that Capture One handles Fuji files is something a little bit different. It just feels a little bit different. I wish I enjoyed the Capture One user interface a little bit more. I still like Lightroom's interface much better, but the results that it produces is just staggering. Now, before I get to kind of the answering the questions of, why I switched, what would I have done differently, am I still happy with my decision, I do want to say just a real quick thanks again to the sponsor of this week's video, which is Professional Photographers of America, or PPA for short. There's a ton of benefits of using PPA, but the main attraction for me was their straightforward approach to insuring camera gear. They now offer full replacement coverage with a flat $350 deductible, or you can repair your equipment with a flat $50 deductible. And with a PPA membership, you'll also receive their data loss prevention services designed specifically for photographers and their small businesses with data loss recovery services, and even your legal fees if you happen to have an unhappy client. PPA also recently upgraded their education platform that now features over 900 online videos, tutorials, and personalized curriculums on how to grow your own business with topics like brand messaging, entrepreneurism, and so much more. So whether you're just starting out or you've been into photography for years, join a community of over 32,000 photographers and click the link in the description below to join PPA and receive $25 off your membership today. So as far as the questions go, the most commonly asked question and the real big one is why I switched. What was wrong with Sony? And the easy answer is nothing. There was absolutely nothing wrong with Sony. Just like there's nothing wrong with Nikon, there's nothing wrong with Canon. There's nothing wrong with any of these camera brands. They are all absolutely fantastic today. They're all producing incredible, incredible cameras that produce incredible results. But for me personally, some people might not like this answer because it is very basic. It seems very elementary. But the main reason that I switched to Fuji is that was the brand that less photographers were using. I've seen so many polls out there. I did a lot of research, and Fujifilm is the brand that the least amount of people are using for professional photography. And I've always been in this kind of mindset of thinking a little bit differently, being a little bit different. And I said, you know what, that's a pretty easy way to kind of instantly be a little bit different, is use the camera manufacturer that the least amount of people are using. Plus, I always heard about how fun they are to use and how easy they are to use, and the retro design, the way they look cool. And I never looked at a camera like, oh, the camera needs to look cool, but it's pretty nice when your camera looks cool, in my opinion. So that's really why I switched. Wanted to be a little bit different. And I kept hearing about how Fujifilm cameras kind of get out of your way and let you focus on creativity, and they absolutely do. And it's something that you really can't quantify, or I should say you really can't understand until you use one on location. And then the next question is, what would I have done differently with my switch? And I wouldn't really do a whole lot different. I'm really happy with the setup that I have right now. I have the GFX 100S paired with the 23mm prime. I have the 100 to 200mm, which is the equivalent of like a 80 to 190-ish on a full frame camera. Both absolutely beautiful lenses. Love the camera. And then I also have a smaller setup paired with the 10 to 24, which I'm filming on right now, along with the X-T4. And then I have this right here. This is the 55 to 200. So I've got a kind of a larger medium format system. And then I also have an APS-C crop sensor system. So depending on where I'm going, if I'm going somewhere where I have to hike a very long distance or a very steep climb, and it's a difficult hike, I will almost always bring the X-T4. It's a much smaller and lighter setup. If I'm going somewhere that requires a higher resolution camera or is a little bit easier of a hike, I will always bring the medium format camera. So it's nice to have two different setups that can run in tandem, and I can bring one if I need to, depending on the situation that I am going to. But what I would have done differently is I would have just started using Capture One earlier. I I knew in the very get-go Capture One was the way to go, but I just couldn't get past that user interface, and I just kept kind of going back to Lightroom, and I edited a lot of my early Fuji files in Lightroom, and it kind of not wasted, but I think it slowed down my Fujifilm learning progression, if you will. And now I edit everything in Capture One, and I'm enjoying the interface a little bit more now, but it does take some getting used to. But that's really what I would have changed or done differently, is used Capture One right out of the gate, because it really does make a huge difference if you are editing raw Fuji files. And then the final question, am I still happy with my decision? And yes, I am absolutely still happy with my decision. I can't say that Fujifilm is better than Sony or Canon or Nikon or any other camera brand out there. But for me personally, this is right now the best camera setup that I've ever owned. I have more enjoyment shooting with this system more than anything that I've ever owned. And I think that's what is absolutely most important, is that you enjoy the camera that you're using, that you enjoy the lenses that you're using, and you're excited to get out there and use them, and they don't get in your way. You can just focus on being creative. You can just focus on making beautiful art, beautiful images, and that's what you're focused on. You're not focused on how do I change this setting or how do I choose that setting. So these cameras get out of your way and let you focus on what's most important. I think that's what matters. So I do hope you enjoyed this week's video. Over my, kind of just discussing my 2-year experience, actually a little more than 2 years, but 2-year experience using Fujifilm for landscape photography. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments section below, and I definitely will get back in touch with you. And if you enjoyed this week's video, if you could give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed already. And click the link below for additional information in regards to Professional Photographers of America. Also get $25 off your membership as well. So as always, thank you so much for watching this week's video. I really do appreciate it, and I will see you all next Wednesday. Bye.